I thank thanks to the FES-AU office for the opportunity to be able to speak to this issue and to basically reflect on the ideas behind this. And while going through it's something that is still at a conceptual level. It's still being deliberated, and it's a conversation that's ongoing, from what I understand. And so, reading through the concept note and looking at the kind of the key rationale for wanting to do this, it kind of brings me back to some of the conversations that even led to this recommendation that Soko was mentioned in her report, which I believe is available online, and I do encourage everyone to make use of these resources, because a number of the things Soko has mentioned came up in the session we had earlier on today, where we had our early career researchers and students looking at debt contracting frameworks in different countries across the African continent. So the first question, and I would be posing or throwing a number of questions to the audience, and the reason is this. I believe that obviously this is a strategic platform and opportunity to both launch the reports as well as push forward the idea of a debt observatory. So I also believe that that also presents an opportunity for a wide range of experts and stakeholders who are attending both the session and the conference over the next few days to be able to speak to and contribute to the development and the progression of an idea like this. Now, why is this important? Because, I mean, something that's been quite clear since the plenary sessions, the keynotes, and the sessions we've had up to this point, that we are discussing ways and ideas, both practical, reformist, and even revolutionist, on ways on how we can have a position that is African-centered and speaks to, addresses the issues that Africa faces as it relates to debt, and to do so in an integrated way, a comprehensive and interdisciplinary way. So the first question that comes to mind when thinking about the idea of a debt observatory is, why do we need one? What's the importance of data? What's the importance of statistics? And now I'm not an economist, I'm a lawyer by training, but even from I'm an academic as well. But obviously from the days of study and trying to kind of make our way through graduate school, one of the key things that became very obvious to us as graduate students was, one, either the lack of data or the lack of reliable data. Or sometimes even more frustrating is the lack of publicly available data about things that affect the public. And this is not only frustrating, I believe, for students or academics. I believe it's something that also is an issue for civil society groups, for policymakers, for politicians. And what I believe is even surprising is that it appears that in the dynamics of sovereign debt, management, negotiation, and contracting, we in Africa appear to be the most, I would say, we get the short end of the stick in terms of credit rating agencies are a wealth of information. International financial institutions, they are basically a database and a wealth of information. Hence, most times when you are looking for data about debt or any issue relating to economic development or otherwise, you find yourself having to look to those sources. So, and something that kind of came up quite prominently in one of the presentations yesterday was the value of data in the economy of the 21st century and moving forward. I remember the example given about how Facebook It's a marketplace that has different components to it, and most times you might end up being a product. And when we say you're a product, it's the data or your data that is valuable. So data is valuable, and data obviously is valuable when it comes to making informed decisions, whether for policymakers, civil society groups, or anyone who is interested, or even the average citizen, the common, the man on the street, the woman on the street. We need data, reliable data that is available and is easily accessible, data that is not hidden behind paywalls. I mean, for instance, there are times I come across some reports which look very good and I want to get access to it, maybe written by some of these major consultancy firms. And then you have to pay a ridiculous amount of money to be able to get access to that. Now, obviously, we know that there are existing, so it's not like there are not existing databases and repositories for data on debt and associated issues. We have the IMF's International Debt Statistics. There's also data from the World Bank, there's also World Development Indicators, Global Development Finance. But this is problematic because this is data that is framed, shaped, collated, curated, analyzed, interpreted by people that are non-African. And so it does not always represent or speak to the interest of African countries that would sometimes be drawn into transactions and interactions based on the data that they have absolutely no control on. So with that in mind, the idea for an African Debt Observatory is basically to try and create and curate and pull together statistics and data that will be relevant and useful to a range of stakeholders who are interested in addressing the issues relating to sovereign debt management, and the like, that as it affects African countries. So like I said, my first question, which I am posing to the room, so normally we would request you to come up with your questions, but since this is something that I believe should and can constructively feed into the conversations that are ongoing, since it's still at the conceptual stage, the first question I would ask everyone in this room, based on your, perhaps, whether you represent civil society groups, academia, you're a policymaker, or you're a politician. I recall one of the meetings we had, and an honorable parliamentarian from Mozambique was saying something to us which was very instructive. He said, sometimes people think that parliamentarians know everything, but that the truth of the matter is that they rely on audiences and opportunities like this to be able to learn, for the experts to be able to provide them with the information they need to make informed decisions. And obviously, making sure that this information is available in a way that is accessible is critical if we are going to have any meaningful development or change or reform, as we have argued over the last 2 days. For instance, yesterday the conversations about an African, debt architecture. Where would data and the data observatory fit into that configuration and conversation? How critical or relevant will this be? So my first question, which I pose to the audience and the experts in the room, is, do we really need a data observatory? Second question, why haven't we had one all this while? What are the challenges militating against the existence of such a resource? Also, at national level, within domestic polities, there are sources of data or statistics about debt management offices, and the rest. So how does this complement or support or improve on what already exists at the national level? Another question that I would like to pose to the audience here is, how will this benefit the African continent? Or will it benefit the African continent? And closely related to that question is, who should drive, feed into, and be responsible for both designing and operating an idea like this, an institution like this? And finally, putting on still a critical lens, will this make any difference? Now, having put those questions, I would then give you a little bit of the kind of the expectations or the ideas. So basically, like I said, it's still at a conceptual level, but the idea is to basically have something that is housed, located, situated somewhere on the continent, which provides, it will be a tool of exchange of knowledge, analysis, and research on Africa's debt. And I believe that this is important. Do not get me wrong. I believe that this is critical and would be foundational to any efforts, whether by civil society groups, academia, or any other constituents that are interested in seeing Africa become, rule makers and not just rule takers, that this happens. But I also believe that this has to happen in a way that it does benefit or has true benefits for Africa. Now, again, another thing that comes to my mind in terms of looking at the idea and ways in which perhaps we could feed into the conversations at this conceptual stage is something that has come up in a lot of the sessions I've attended today is that the problem in Africa is not the existence of institutions or laws or regulations, but it is the implementation, the enforcement of these processes that tends to or seems to be a challenge. And I remember having a conversation with someone, when we're coming out, and she said something to me. She said that, wow, that sometimes, you think about the issues you face in a particular African country and you think it's very, particular to that country, and then you hear different case studies and you realize that we share similar burdens and similar problems. Now, as we address these issues and we continue to deliberate on ways to build common consensus and to find practical ways to address the debt issue in a holistic way, data will be crucial. It will be fundamental. Access to it would also be important. But back to the questions I raised. I hope this stimulates some conversation and some input, because at the end of the day, whatever emerges from this particular idea, which I believe is a very wonderful one, will be something that we should all be able to take ownership and, be committed to seeing it actually benefit Africa and Africa's interests. So just back again to those questions as you think about, obviously, perhaps what you are already going to reflect on. Why do we need a debt observatory? How will this benefit Africans? And what and who should feed into the design and the operation of a facility like this? And most importantly, do you think this will make any difference? So I welcome your thoughts and your contributions to this, and I hope that it will feed into the developments and the conversations that have already gone into this fantastic idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Ohio. So you have raised the most important questions. You said that, why do we need this observatory? So I think we are going to get an answer from Patrick. So since he's the right person for that question. So Patrick, we were together last month in Lusaka, Zambia, and we have discussed about the possibility of adapting these organizations, not only ADO, the African Debt Observatory, but we have also in the pipeline African Investment Observatory, African Trade Observatory. So we have all these observatories parallelly going on. So what is the rationale behind that? Also, Professor Daniel, I think yesterday have asked this, why do we believe these institutions are working will be like effective than those who are the existing ones. So could you please give us like an overview, the rationale behind this, and also like what was the discussion at the time during the HCC meeting? Because we have witnessed some countries like were supporting these institutions, but some were reserved about these institutions. So what is the political argument behind these institutions like? So you have the floor and you have 50 minutes.